We are very good at categorizing people. And we have a way of categorizing people in such a way that it's advantageous to us. We can always find a class of people to point our finger at, look down our self-righteous nose and say, I'm better than they are. But I'll tell you, Paul is putting everybody in one category. I mean, dead is dead. You're talking about a lack of the kind of life that can live forever. God is the only one who's immortal. We read that. He's the only one who's got that kind of life. We don't have it. We have a life that is filled with a principle of sin, the principle of death. I don't care how nice you are, how principled you are in many ways of living in society. I don't care how much you taught Sunday school, how religious you are, how irreligious you are. When it comes to what we're talking about here, God seeking a people in whom He can live, we are all the same. Now, I'm going to go ahead and throw in a story here that illustrates this. I'm borrowing it from Ravi Zacharias. I don't know whether it's original with him or not, and a few of you have heard it, but it serves to illustrate the point. And Ravi told the story about two brothers who were very, very wicked men. They were known far and wide for being wicked. Somehow they'd been able to slip around the law. Maybe they'd paid people off. I don't know. But they were womanizers. They were gamblers. They were drunks. They stepped on people. They didn't care what they had to do to get ahead. They were wealthy. It was all by criminal enterprise. Whatever they could do that was just bad and wicked in the eyes of even of men, they were guilty. They had no conscience whatsoever. And so one day, one of these brothers died. And the other brother got to thinking about it, and he said, I really would like to have a proper funeral for my brother. And so he thought about it some more. He went to a local preacher. And he said, I'd like you to do me a favor. I want you to preach my brother's funeral. And I have plenty of money. I'll be happy to pay you whatever. But there's one condition that I'm making here, and I want you to say at some point in your remarks, I want you to call my brother a saint. Do you think you can do that? And so the preacher thought for a minute. He said, yes, I believe I can do that. And so the day came for the funeral, and they're all gathered there listening to the preacher, and he begins to make his remarks. And he says, you all know this man that we're burying today. You know him, that he was a wicked man. He cheated, he lied, he gambled, he drank, he womanized, he was guilty of everything under the sun. And he went on and on describing the man's wickedness. And then he said, but compared to his brother, he was a saint. Now, that's a humorous story, of course, but doesn't it illustrate the point? We tend to be very comparative in our judgments of our own righteousness and our own standing. The fact is, we are all in this same boat, in this same category. This is the starting point for God to build His church. He doesn't go out and call the righteous. There are none. And the people that think they're righteous don't qualify for what He's doing. There's only one ground upon which we can come, and we all qualify if we only understand it. We are sinners, helpless before a holy God. There's no way that we can gain access into a relationship with a God who is like what we described. High, holy, remote, utterly apart from us, utterly different. We need something beyond what we are able to muster. And I'll tell you what, this world is utterly blind to its condition. And it's a late hour. It's a late hour. We are seeing on every hand this kingdom of the power of the air, the kingdom of the air that he describes here, and in operation. We are seeing a blindness that is growing by the hour. Paul said, if our gospel is hid, it is hid unable to see it, to them that are lost. Why? In whom the God of this world has blinded the minds of them which believe not, lest the light of the glorious gospel in the face of Jesus Christ should shine unto them. It's one thing for there to be no light. It's another thing for there to be light and people be blind and unable to see it. We need a miracle to set us free from the power that operates in this world. And you can see it on every hand as men are turning their hearts away from any light that God would shed upon their path. Their darkness is falling, and people are just giving themselves to this and to that, and they don't know what drives them. You can't pick up the newspaper. You can't turn on your computer and read the news or whatever it is, however you get your news, without seeing people do unspeakable things. Oh, I'll tell you what, it tells me that there's a God who has incredible patience. You think of, I guarantee there's people here who could, everybody here, when there's certain kinds of crimes or terrible things that you read about or hear about, doesn't it make you angry? Doesn't it make you want to just boil over and say, man, that person, they need to die. They need to draw and quarter them and hang the pieces. They just need to do something. It's terrible. But you think about a God who knows everything all at the same time, who reads every heart, every motive, sees every evil deed in the world, the ones that never make the newspapers, and yet He holds back His hand. That's a great God. That's a God whose love and whose mercy drives Him to withhold the hand of righteous judgment that ought to just obliterate us all, because His heart reaches out for a people. It makes me want to be one of those people. That's an amazing God. But listen to what it takes to be a part of what God has set in motion. This great eternal purpose. It says, but, wonderful word beginning in verse 4, but because of His great love for us. It's not because anything in us, is it? God just doesn't look down and say, I feel sorry for that one. They've been through this, they've been through that. I think I will sort of take pity on them. No. If God has shown you favor, don't you look in the mirror and start popping your buttons and say, I did something or I'm better than other people. You're not. I'm not. I'm not. But God, who is, for His great love, because of His great love for us, God, who is rich in mercy, made us alive with Christ even when we were dead in transgressions. I'll tell you, that's some power. That's the power that it takes. Man, you got people that are going to church and making so-called decisions many times. I don't want to just write it all off. God works. God reaches people. But I'll tell you, there's so much where it's just adopting a religion, joining a church. We're not after that. We want people that God makes alive. What did it take for God to raise His Son from the dead? Think about what was going on when Jesus was crucified and put in that tomb. You had all the spirits, the wicked spirits of Satan's kingdom, every one of them arrayed with all their fury against the Son of God. This was their opportunity to put Him in the tomb and be done with it and rule forever over mankind. Do as they pleased. All of hell was arrayed against anything that would change the status quo. I'll tell you, we serve a God who was able to bring His Son out of that tomb, bursting with the life of heaven itself. And not only that, to raise Him up and allow Him to be seen for a period of 40 days or so, and then lifted up from the earth and set on a throne high above all principality and power. You can read it in the chapter 1 of this same book. And there He sits today, ruling over everything. That is the same power by which we are saved.